The academy cafeteria was buzzing with the usual evening chatter, a cacophony of languages, dialects, and cliques from across the coalition. Trays clattered, tails flicked, wings rustled, and the occasional burst of plasma-pink laughter echoed off the high ceiling. To most cadets, it was the daily chaos of 100 species learning to coexist. To Lyra Fankov, it was another opportunity to pretend she wasn't the butt of half the jokes in the room. She sat at the end of one of the long alloy tables, her tray untouched, and Tenny drooping low. Her pale green skin flushed darker at the sound of the whispering 2 tables over. She didn't have to extend her hearing membranes to know what they were saying. She'd heard it all before. She's at it again, you know. Writing her little human stories.
No.
You mean the primitives from Earth?
Yes.
The soft ones. The bipeds who need exosuits just to survive 3/4 of our environments. A burst of laughter. Someone clicked their mandibles against a cup. Can you imagine? Get this, she actually dreams about mating with one. Says they're brave and funny. Lyrafan's claws curled into the metal tabletop. She didn't look up. It would only confirm for them that the rumors were true. And they were. She did dream of humans. Ever since she'd stumbled on that old Earth history file in the Academy archives, footage of a human soldier climbing a ruined cliff face under fire, using nothing but his hands, teeth, and a piece of rope, she'd been hooked. While other cadets admired the crystalline perfection of the Valkyriae or the terrifying strength of the Kroth, Lyrafan found herself fascinated with the odd, reckless creatures from Earth. Humans didn't have claws, carapaces, wings, venom, or psionic fields. They didn't even have regenerative molting cycles. And yet, they survived. No, they thrived. Against every odd, in every environment, they had clawed their way to space with sheer stubbornness and the ability to laugh in the face of pain. But try telling that to her peers. Lyra the lovesick, someone jeered in a sing-song tone. Careful she doesn't start sketching little humans on your datapads. More laughter. Her frills flushed scarlet. She wanted to lash out, to shout at them that humans weren't weak, that they weren't toys, that they'd done things no other race could. But she'd tried before, and it had only made the mockery worse. So instead, she kept her head low, staring at her reflection in the metallic surface of her meal tray. She hated that she was trembling. She hated that she cared. She hated that she was alone in this. The sound of the cafeteria doors opening barely registered at first. Students came and went constantly. But then the room changed. The noise dimmed, laughter cutting short as if someone had turned down the gravity. Heads turned. Frills stiffened. Wings twitched. Lyrafan glanced up and froze. A figure had walked in. Not a towering Valkyriae, not a Kroth brute, not one of the many delicate crystalline scholars.
No.
This was one of them. Broad-shouldered, two-legged, two-armed, with skin the color of sun-warmed bronze and hair dark as voidstone. He moved with an easy stride, as though walking into a room full of predators didn't bother him in the slightest. His uniform was crisp, the academy crest gleaming on his chest. He carried his tray like it weighed nothing, his eyes scanning the room with quiet amusement. A human. The cafeteria practically vibrated with disbelief. By the stars. They let one in. There's no way. Lyrafan's heart slammed against her ribcage. She'd read files, seen vids, imagined 1,000 scenarios. But she'd never thought she'd actually see one. Not here. Not now. And certainly not right after being mocked for her ridiculous fantasies. The human ignored the stares, moving through the sea of alien cadets as though he belonged there. He didn't hunch, didn't flinch, didn't glance nervously at the sharp claws and venomous stingers surrounding him. Instead, he smirked, actually smirked, when a Kroth cadet bumped his shoulder. Lyrafan's frills flared without her permission. That smirk. It was exactly as she'd imagined. The mocking voices started again, though quieter now, half in disbelief. Oh, look. Lyra's dream boy has arrived. Careful, human. She might propose on the spot. Stars, the timing. This is priceless. Her claws dug deeper into the table. She wanted to vanish. She wanted to leap across the room. She wanted. And then he looked at her. For a heartbeat, the room ceased to exist. His eyes, impossibly dark, impossibly steady, locked on hers across the sea of cadets. And he grinned. Not mockery. Not confusion. A grin like he'd just stepped into a challenge he couldn't wait to tackle. He changed direction, cutting through the crowd, and before Lirafin could even process what was happening, he was setting his tray down across from her. "Mind if I sit?" he asked, voice carrying just enough to make sure every gawker nearby heard him. A ripple of shock tore through the room. Lirafin's antennae shot up. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Yes. I mean, no. I mean... He sat anyway, still grinning. "Thanks," he said easily, as though she hadn't just suffered a full neural shutdown. He stabbed a utensil into his food and took a bite without hesitation. "Name's Jack. Jack Harper. And you are?" The whispers were deafening now. "She's actually talking to him. No way. She's gonna melt right there." Lirafin's face flushed so hot her frills practically smoked. "El Lirafin Kov," she managed. Jack chewed, swallowed, and then leaned his elbows on the table, studying her with that same infuriating, intoxicating grin. "So, Lirafin, why do I get the feeling you and I are already the talk of the room?" She blinked. You heard them?" He chuckled. "Hard not to, honestly. I think half this place was waiting for me to sit down somewhere else just so they could laugh at you." He tilted his head, smirk sharpening. "But I hate making bullies happy." Her mandibles parted in shock. You chose?" "Of course," Jack said. "Why wouldn't I sit with the one person who's clearly more interesting than the rest of this room?" The cafeteria went dead silent. Lirafin's world tilted on its axis. He didn't even know what he'd just done. Or maybe he did. Either way, the game had just changed. And for the first time, Lirafin realized something that made her claws tremble against the table. Her fantasy had just walked into reality. And everyone in the academy was watching. By the next morning, the entire academy knew. News at the academy traveled faster than plasma bolts in vacuum, and humans, apparently, made excellent gossip fuel. The human cadet who'd sat with lovesick Lyra in the cafeteria was now the subject of every whisper, every laugh, every speculative bet. And Jack? He didn't seem to notice, or if he did, he didn't care. He strode into the training hall like he owned it, wearing that same crooked grin, uniform sleeves rolled up as if he were headed for a brawl instead of a lecture. Lirafin trailed behind him, antennae twitching nervously. She had begged him not to draw attention. He'd responded by loudly asking if she wanted to show him the good seats in front of at least 3 cloth bruisers. Now every eye in the room tracked them. "They're inseparable already," someone muttered. "Watch, she'll faint when he breathes." Lirafin wanted to vanish under the floor. But Jack, infuriatingly, just plopped into a seat in the middle row and patted the spot beside him until she reluctantly sat down. "You're enjoying this," she hissed. "Of course," Jack said. "They expect me to cower in a corner. So I do the opposite. That's rule 1 of dealing with jerks." She struggled for words. "That's reckless." "Yeah," Jack agreed cheerfully, leaning back in his seat. "That's the fun part." Before she could argue further, the lights dimmed. The massive hollow projector at the front of the hall flickered to life, casting a glowing schematic of a warship across the room. Instructor Valdar, a Valkyrie whose wings spread like silver sails, stepped forward with the usual gravitas. "Cadets," Valdar intoned, "today begins your tactical combat simulations. You will be placed in randomized squads to test your adaptability, cooperation, and ability to face the unexpected. Survive, and you will advance. Fail, and you will repeat until you do not." The wings flared for emphasis. A ripple of excitement ran through the room. This was what most cadets lived for, the chance to prove themselves in simulated war. For Lirafin, it was the moment she dreaded. Because she knew, beyond doubt, who the other cadets would want on their team. And who they wouldn't. She sneaked a glance at Jack. He was watching the holo display with an intensity that made her frills quiver. He looked calm. Too calm. Didn't he realize what was about to happen? Sure enough, when squads were drawn and names flickered on the display, the reaction was immediate. Lirafin Kov. Jack Harper. Plus 3 others, a crystalline scholar named Varix, a Crothbruiser named Drak, and a feathered Valkyrie named Cellari. The hall erupted in laughter and groans. "They're on our team," Cellari squawked, feathers puffing. Drak slammed a clawed fist into his palm. "A soft skin and a dreamer. Dead weight." Lyraphen wilted. It was her nightmare realized. Jack just stretched his arms overhead and grinned. "Looks like we're the underdogs, huh?" Varix's crystalline facets flickered with disdain. "Underdogs? More like doomed." Instructor Valdar raised a wing for silence. "Squads, to your stations. The simulation begins in 5. The simulation chamber was a vast dome, shifting and morphing with hard light projectors. When Squad 17, Lyraphen's squad, entered, the environment shimmered into existence, a ruined cityscape under a sickly green sky, buildings shattered and smoking. Enemy drones swarmed in the distance, their red eyes glowing. A tactical overlay blinked across their visors. Objective, reach extraction point. Survive hostile pursuit. Cellari immediately took command. "I'm not following a human or a lovesick fool. I lead." Drak cracked his knuckles. "Fine. As long as I get to smash things." Varix chimed in, voice sharp. "Then stay out of my calculations." Lyraphen opened her mandibles to suggest caution, but no one was listening. Except Jack. "Okay," he said casually. "Cellari leads, Drak smashes, Varix calculates. Lyra, what's your specialty?" She blinked. I, sensors. Recon. Stealth. Perfect, Jack said. He gave her a quick grin. "Then you're our eyes. I'll cover you." Cellari scoffed. "Cover her? With what?" "Your fragile human body." Jack winked. "Exactly." They moved into the ruined streets, bickering the whole way. At first, everything went as expected. Cellari barking orders, Drak charging ahead, Varix complaining about inefficiency. But then the drones attacked. They came in fast, dozens of them swooping from the ruins, firing plasma bolts. Cellari shrieked orders, Drak charged, Varix calculated firing vectors. And Jack grabbed a chunk of rubble and threw it. The rock smashed into a drone mid-flight, sending it spiraling into a building. Lyraphen's antennae shot straight up. You hit it." Jack shrugged. "Gotta work with what you've got." He darted forward, using debris as cover, pelting drones with whatever he could grab. He shouted at Drak to flank, barked encouragement at Cellari, and, stars help her, he winked at Lyra every time she called out an enemy position. For a moment, impossibly, they worked as a team. Then the real test came. The ground shook. A massive war drone stomped into view, metal limbs bristling with cannons. The cadets froze. Cellari's feathers flattened. We can't fight that." Drak snarled. "I'll tear it apart." Varix cut him off. "I calculate a 99.7% chance of squad elimination." Panic rose. "And Jack grinned. "Sounds fun." Before anyone could stop him, he sprinted straight toward the war drone. "Human, are you insane?" Lyraphen cried, antennae flaring. "Probably," Jack shouted back. He slid under a plasma bolt, grabbed another chunk of rubble, and hurled it at the drone's leg joint. Sparks erupted. The machine staggered. "See? Weak spots," he yelled. The others gaped. He wasn't stronger than the war drone. He wasn't faster. But he was unpredictable. Reckless. And suddenly, his madness was infectious. Drak roared and charged. Cellari swooped to harass the drone's optics. Varix recalculated vectors with frantic speed. Lyraphen, heart hammering, spotted a gap in the armor and screamed coordinates. Together, impossibly, they brought the machine down. The simulation ended with a blinding flash. When the lights returned, Squad 17 stood panting amid the fading projection. The war drone lay crumpled at their feet. The silence that followed was deafening. Instructor Valdar's silver wings rustled. For once, the ancient Valkyrie seemed at a loss for words. Finally, Valdar spoke. "Unexpected. Very unexpected." Cellari gaped. He made us win." Drak growled, but it wasn't his usual contempt. "The human fights like a lunatic. I respect that. Even Varix's facets glimmered uneasily. Illogical, but effective. Lyriphen's frills glowed with pride. For the first time in her academy career, she wasn't the laughingstock. And Jack? He just brushed dust off his sleeves and smirked. So, what's next? But victory came with consequences. By the end of the day, whispers filled every corridor. Not just laughter now, but unease. The human wasn't supposed to win. He wasn't supposed to inspire. He wasn't supposed to prove anything. And yet he had. Cadets who once mocked Lyriphen now eyed her warily, as though she'd been part of some dangerous secret all along. Others sneered more viciously than before, desperate to push her back down. And among the instructors, conversations grew sharper. Allowing a human into the academy was controversial enough. Allowing him to excel? Unthinkable. The pressure mounted. That night, Lyriphen sat with Jack on the observation deck, stars sprawling across the void beyond the glass. She wanted to tell him how much it meant, how proud she was, how terrified she felt. Instead, she blurted the first thing that came to mind. "You're going to get us both killed." Jack chuckled, hands behind his head. "Maybe. But we'll make it one hell of a ride first." She stared at him, antennae curling. "You don't understand. They'll hate you for this. They already hate me. Now they'll double it." "Good," Jack said simply. "Good. Yeah. Means we're doing something right." She couldn't decide if he was the bravest fool she'd ever met, or the most foolish brave. Maybe both. And somewhere deep in her chest, where her fears had lived for so long, something new stirred. Hope. The summons came at dawn. Lyriphen hadn't slept. Her antennae twitched restlessly all night, her thoughts chasing themselves in endless circles. Every whisper she'd overheard yesterday replayed in her mind, sharper and darker each time. The Kroth cadets muttering about teaching the human a lesson. The Valkyriae scoffing that primitive mammals don't belong among the stars. Even Varix, who had grudgingly admitted Jack's tactics had worked, whispering crystalline curses under his breath when he thought no one was listening. And now, an official summons. She knew before she even opened the holo message what it meant. The Academy wasn't going to let Jack's reckless victory stand. They called it a demonstration match. A chance for cadets to test themselves against the unusual human in a controlled environment. A spectacle, they claimed, to study adaptive survival. But everyone knew what it really was. A trial. An execution, dressed in Academy colors. And worse, her name was listed right beside Jack's. Squad pairing 17, Harper, Jack. Kov, Lyriphen. Versus multi-species opposition. Her claws trembled against the holoscreen. She couldn't breathe. "They'll kill us," she whispered. Jack, leaning against the bulkhead with infuriating calm, just smirked. "Nah. They'll try." "Jack," she rounded on him, frills flaring. "This isn't a simulation exercise anymore. They're going to throw everything at us. Kroth berserkers, Valkyriae elites, maybe even live drones. You saw the way they looked at you after yesterday. They want you broken. And me, stars help me, I'll be broken with you." Jack just stretched, cracking his knuckles. "Then I guess we better not break." Her mandibles clicked in frustration. "How can you be so reckless?" "Because it works," Jack said simply. "Listen, Lyra. They've already decided what's supposed to happen. They expect me to cower, fail, or get stomped into paste. They expect you to shrink beside me. So," he grinned, that maddening human grin that made her antennae tremble, "we don't do what they expect." The arena was packed. Cadets filled the stands, instructors lined the observation decks, and the holographic recorders hovered like vultures. A simulation dome covered the center floor, already flickering with the chosen terrain, a dense alien jungle, steaming and tangled, thick with vines and shadows. It was no accident. The environment was specifically hostile to humans. Poisonous air, dangerous flora, uneven terrain. For most species, survivable. For a human, lethal. Lyriphen's gills flared as the simulation field powered up. She could breathe here. Her species thrived in dense, toxic jungles. "Jack, though," He just tightened his gloves and adjusted the filter mask fitted over his mouth. Nice. A little home away from home, huh? Home, she sputtered. This place kills creatures like you in minutes. Guess I'll have to move fast then. He winked. The announcer's voice boomed across the arena. Demonstration match. Pair 17 versus combined cadet opposition. Objective: survive until extraction signal. Combatants, prepare. The opposition squad shimmered into existence across the jungle floor, 5 towering cadets from rival species. A Croth, bristling with armor-plated hide. A Valkyrie, wings gleaming. A crystalline Varix, facets glittering. And 2 others, a scaled Saraxi and a tentacled Morvian. All of them out for blood. The signal blared. Begin. The jungle exploded into chaos. Plasma fire tore through the air, vines snapped, branches crashed. The opposing squad charged immediately, no hesitation. Jack grabbed Lyriphen's arm and yanked her into cover. Move. She stumbled after him, heart hammering. We can't outrun them. Not trying to outrun, Jack said, eyes scanning the terrain with manic focus. We're gonna out-crazy them. What does that even? A plasma bolt scorched the tree above them. She yelped. Jack shoved her down, then grinned as though the near-death had been nothing but a joke. Rule 2, he said. If they're bigger, meaner, and faster, make them confused. And then he was gone, darting through the foliage like he'd grown up in it. Lyriphen cursed under her breath and followed, antennae twitching for signs of pursuit. The opposition squad crashed through the jungle after them, their superior physiques tearing through vines and branches. But Jack wasn't running blindly. He was choosing his path. She realized it as she saw him deliberately duck into thickets, scale mossy ridges, and double back through pools of sludge. He was leading them. Here, he hissed, yanking her into a hollow under a massive root. They crouched together as the opposition thundered past overhead. Lyriphen's gills fluttered in disbelief. You just outmaneuvered a Croth. Not hard, Jack whispered, smirking. Guy charges like a tank. Easy to sidestep if you're not standing in front of him. She stared. He wasn't just reckless. He was strategic. Not like her instructors, not like the calculated battle chess of the Valkyrie or the brute force tactics of the Croth. Jack's strategy was chaos itself, using unpredictability as a weapon. The jungle shuddered with explosions as the opposition squad realized they'd lost them. Shouts echoed. Split up. They're close. I smell mammal. Jack's grin widened. Perfect. Lyriphen's frills twitched. Perfect. They'll surround us. Exactly. Which means they won't expect this. Before she could stop him, Jack snatched a thick vine and swung upward, vanishing into the canopy like some ancient jungle predator. Jack! She hissed, panic flaring. Then came the crash. The Croth roared as Jack dropped onto its back from above, hammering its head with both fists. The massive cadet staggered, flailing, smashing into trees. Lyriphen's jaw dropped. He's insane, she whispered. But the Croth fell. Jack landed in a roll, breath ragged, and shot her a manic grin. One down. The Valkyrie shrieked in fury, diving from above with blinding speed. Lyriphen reacted on instinct, her antennae detecting the faint hum of the bird-like cadet's wing beats. She screamed coordinates. Jack dove sideways at the last second. The Valkyrie slammed into the ground, stunned. Jack grabbed a fallen branch and jabbed it into the Valkyrie's wing joint. Not fatal, the simulation rules prevented real death, but enough to disable. 2 down, he shouted. The stands roared. Cadets who'd mocked Lyriphen days ago were now on their feet, some in disbelief, some in reluctant awe. The human wasn't breaking. He was winning. But the fight wasn't over. The crystalline Varix advanced, firing precise energy bolts. The Saraxi slithered, fangs dripping venom. The Morvian's tentacles writhed, lashing at the trees. Lyriphen's chest heaved. They couldn't take them all head-on. They'd exhausted too much already. Jack, we can't. Yes, we can, Jack said, eyes blazing. Because they don't get it. They think survival's about strength or calculation. But survival's about this, he tapped his head. And this. He thumped his chest. Brains and stubbornness. Before she could argue, he sprinted straight at the Variks, zigzagging wildly. Bolts sizzled past him, missing by inches. He leapt, rolled, grabbed a chunk of crystalline debris, and mirrored the Variks' movements. The crystalline cadet froze in shock as Jack mimicked his every gesture, turning precision into chaos. And then Lyriphen understood. He wasn't trying to overpower. He was trying to short-circuit expectations. The Saraxi lunged for Jack's exposed flank, only to meet Lyriphen instead. Her claws slashed, antennae vibrating with battle clarity. For once, she wasn't shrinking. She was fighting. The Saraxi hissed, retreating. The Morvian surged forward, tentacles whipping. Jack grabbed one, bit it, and yelled, "Ever heard of rabies?" The Morvian shrieked in horror, flailing wildly, and crashed into the crystalline cadet. The simulation froze. A blinding flash. Pair 17, victorious. The arena dissolved back into sterile white. Silence. Then an uproar. The stands exploded with noise. Cheers, curses, disbelieving laughter. Jack stood in the center, chest heaving, grinning like a madman. Lyriphen, panting beside him, antennae still quivering, realized her claws were shaking not from fear, but from exhilaration. They'd done it. Against everything, against everyone, they'd done it. But as the crowd roared, she caught sight of the instructors. They weren't cheering. They were frowning, whispering, plotting. Jack might have won today, but this wasn't over. And deep inside, Lyriphen knew, the real battle hadn't even begun. The summons came again, this time not at dawn but late in the night. Lyriphen had just begun to drift into uneasy rest when her comm unit pulsed with a sharp, crimson light. She knew what it meant before she touched it. This wasn't a friendly call, or even an official schedule update. Crimson was reserved for one thing only, disciplinary summons. Her gills fluttered. She hesitated. And then she looked at the other side of her bunk. Jack was sprawled there on his cot, one arm dangling off the edge, breathing deep and even. The faintest hint of a smirk tugged at his lips, even in sleep, as though he were still mocking the universe in his dreams. Lyriphen envied that confidence. She wanted to cling to it. But the crimson light pulsed again, insistent. She touched it. Cadets Kov and Harper, came the voice of Instructor Valdar. Cold. Metallic. Report to Tribunal Chamber Delta. Immediately. The tribunal chamber wasn't like the classrooms or training halls. It was cold. Empty. Built less for instruction than for judgment. A ring of instructors formed a semicircle on the dais, their eyes sharp, their wings and scales and crystalline edges gleaming under the stark white light. At the center of the chamber, Jack and Lyriphen stood side by side. Lyriphen's frills trembled as Valdar's voice echoed. "Cadets, you have disrupted the order of this academy. Twice now, you have overturned simulations designed to teach humility and cooperation. Instead, you have sown chaos. You have humiliated superior cadets. You have mocked tradition." Jack tilted his head. "Pretty sure I just survived." A ripple of disapproval hissed through the chamber. Valdar's silver wings snapped. "You misunderstand, human. Survival is not the lesson here. Discipline is. Order. Unity. You have shown none of these. Instead, you have infected Cadet Kov with your recklessness." Lyriphen stiffened. "Infected," she whispered. Valdar turned his gaze on her. "You were a dreamer before, Kov. Now you are worse, a dreamer emboldened. You think humans are special. You think they are worthy. This delusion threatens not only your career but the cohesion of the academy itself." The words sliced into her like claws. For years, she'd endured the mockery, the laughter, the name-calling. But hearing it delivered as fact from an instructor's mouth, it nearly broke her. Nearly. Then Jack's hand brushed hers. Not a full grip, not even an overt gesture. Just the faintest brush, grounding her. And suddenly, she remembered the jungle. The war drone. The smirk in the cafeteria. The way he'd said, "Good," when she'd warned him they'd be hated. He wasn't backing down. So neither could she. Jack spoke again, his tone sharper now. You keep saying I don't belong. That humans don't belong. But here's the thing, if we don't belong, why can't you beat us? Gasps echoed. The instructors bristled. Valdar's wings flared wide. Insolence! Jack shrugged. Truth. One of the crystalline instructors leaned forward, facets glittering. You would claim humans deserve a place among the stars because you survived a pair of simulations? Jack's smirk returned. No. I claim humans deserve a place among the stars because every time the universe tells us to die quietly, we don't. The chamber erupted in noise. Some instructors shouted for silence. Others muttered darkly. Valdar slammed his wing into the ground, silencing the room. His eyes burned like molten silver. Very well, human. You wish to prove your worth? You shall face one final test. Not a simulation. Not a squad skirmish. A trial by ordeal. If you survive, you may remain. If you fail... His pause was deliberate, cruel. You will be expelled. Permanently. Lyriphen's chest tightened. Both of us. Valdar's gaze swept over her. If you continue to tie your fate to his carve, then yes. Both. Jack turned to her, voice low. You don't have to. You can walk away. She met his gaze. Her claws shook, but her voice did not. No. I've been mocked long enough. If this is my only chance to prove them wrong, then I take it. With you. For the first time that night, Jack's grin softened. Good answer. The ordeal was set for the next day. The arena once again filled, but this time the atmosphere was different. Heavier. No longer just spectacle, this was judgment. Students whispered like carrion feeders circling a dying beast. Instructors stood grim-faced. The ordeal environment shimmered into view. Not a jungle this time. Not ruins. Space. A derelict war station drifted across the dome. Broken corridors, flickering lights, half-functional systems. And in its heart, a swarm of automated hunter drones. The objective blinked across their visors. Survive 30 minutes until extraction beacon. 30 minutes. Against machines designed to slaughter. Jack exhaled, rolling his shoulders. Well, could be worse. How? Lyriphen hissed. Could be 40 minutes. He winked. And then the trial began. The first wave hit fast. Hunter drones poured from the walls, wings buzzing, claws snapping. Lyriphen shrieked coordinates, antennae flaring, as Jack grabbed a pipe from the wall and swung like a madman. Metal screeched, sparks flew. Left. Lyriphen cried. Jack ducked, pipe whipping in a brutal arc, smashing a drone into shards. Nice call. But more came. And more. They fought through broken corridors, ducking through vents, using debris as weapons. Lyriphen hacked into a half-dead console, rerouting power to overload doors. Jack laughed like a lunatic as he tore panels off walls to use as shields. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't orderly. But it worked. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. They were battered, scorched, bleeding. Lyriphen's frills were singed, Jack's filter mask cracked. But they were still moving. Still fighting. At 20 minutes, the drones adapted. Heavier units appeared, towering constructs with plasma cannons. The stands erupted in anticipation. Surely this would end it. But Jack only grinned wider. Finally, a challenge. He hurled his broken pipe into the ceiling, shattering a coolant line. Icy vapor blasted down, cloaking the hall. Now, he shouted. Lyriphen's claws darted, antennae vibrating. She triggered an overload. The coolant vapor ignited with the sparking wires. The corridor exploded. When the smoke cleared, the drones were slag. Jack and Lyriphen staggered out, coughing, burned, but alive. 25 minutes. The last 5 were the longest of her life. The drones kept coming, endless, tireless. Her muscles screamed, her claws dripped with strain. Jack bled openly from a cut across his brow. And yet he never stopped grinning. Never stopped moving. When the extraction beacon finally blared, when the arena dissolved back into white light, when the trial finally ended, they were still standing. Barely, but standing. The silence that followed was like a vacuum. Then, slowly, impossibly, applause. First from a cluster of younger cadets. Then more, until the entire arena shook with the sound. Even some instructors looked grudgingly impressed. Jack raised a fist in the air, grinning despite the blood and bruises. "Told you we don't die easy." Lirafin, trembling, and Tenny quivering, felt something swell in her chest she'd never dared feel before. Pride. Not shame. Not fear. Pride. The tribunal reconvened that evening. Valdar's silver wings hung low. His voice was tight. "You have passed the ordeal. Against expectation. Against reason. Therefore, by tradition, you may remain." Lirafin nearly collapsed with relief. Jack just smirked. "Glad we could entertain." The chamber rippled with uneasy laughter. Valdar's eyes narrowed. "But know this, human. You are an anomaly. An outlier. Do not mistake survival for acceptance." Jack leaned forward, grin wicked. "Funny. That's exactly what humans always mistake survival for." Later, on the observation deck, the stars sprawled endless and bright. Lirafin leaned on the railing, gills fluttering, and Tenny swaying in the quiet. "You realize they'll never stop trying to push you out." Jack leaned beside her, arms folded. "Yeah. And you'll never stop pushing back." "Never." She tilted her head, studying him. "Why? Why fight so hard to be here? To belong among us?" Jack was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Because if there's one thing humans are good at, it's walking into a room full of people who say we don't belong, and staying until they can't imagine the place without us." Lirafin's frills flushed a warm gold. Her mandibles twitched into something almost like a smile. "They mocked me for dreaming about humans," she whispered. "And now I think I'll let them keep mocking." Jack grinned. "Good. Let them. Every great story starts with someone being laughed at." She turned her gaze back to the stars, her heart lighter than it had ever been. For the first time, she believed those stories might come true. And for the first time, the Academy believed it too, even if they didn't dare admit it yet.